Okay, so here's something I think that needs to be talked about. When is it we as citizens are justified in defending ourselves or using deadly, lethal force on somebody that we consider to be a threat, that is going to do us physical harm or potential death if we don't do something about it? I was talking to a guy last night who was talking about how he thought that it would be a good idea to incapacitate somebody by shooting them in the leg if they came after him. I told him, I don't know about that. There's a reason why they don't teach law enforcement. There's a reason why they don't teach the military to shoot somebody in the leg to try and incapacitate them. For one thing, if they've got a firearm, you shoot them in the leg, and even if they fall down, they still pose a threat. They still got their hands. They can still point their gun at you. They can still do something. A lot of the time, the person's on drugs. They're on something. A lot of the time when things like this happen, where somebody is coming at you with something that is a potential deadly weapon, such as a ball bat, crowbar, big stick, rock, something that could potentially do you harm or inflict death on you, they're on something. A lot of the time when people are doing this stuff, they're not thinking clearly, they're not thinking straight, they're on drugs, and they will kill you and not even think about it because they're not thinking at all. They are just feeling whatever it is that they've taken. What I would say is if your goal is to just wound somebody, if you feel like they're going to pose a threat to you or they're going to come after you and maybe kill you, if your goal is to just wound them, to incapacitate them, I would highly recommend maybe getting something that is not a firearm. If you're into nunchucks, get some nunchucks. Get a taser, get some pepper spray. Get something that will wound them. Tranquilizer gun, something like that, I don't know. But again, there is a reason why military, there is a reason why police officers have firearms. Because sometimes the only way to incapacitate a deadly threat or stop a deadly threat is to use deadly force. A lot of people don't know when they're justified in doing that. Some people think it's okay to wound. There's a guy I know personally, we'll say his name is Joe. He had somebody, it's kind of a long story, but he had somebody try to come into his house. It started out in his yard where they were arguing, and then the guy at one point charged him, so Joe took off, went in his house, shut the door, tells his wife, call 911, and she's sitting there going, I don't have my cell phone, of course. And so he's keeping the door shut, trying to keep this guy out, Joe is, and a lot of people don't know what to do in a situation like that. Would you have been justified in shooting through the door at this guy? Don't do it. The guy's not in the house. He's not a threat. To my knowledge, there was no weapons involved, but Joe was trying to keep him out of the house. What would have happened if the guy had come in the house? I don't know. Maybe the guy was just trying to scare him, but this is just an example of something that happened, and nobody ended up getting hurt. It ended up getting handled. The wife, of course, didn't have her cell phone, so help wasn't going to be on the way anytime soon. So how are you going to handle this situation? What are you going to do? And like I said, in this case, nobody got hurt. Nothing happened. Everything turned out to be just fine. This guy flew off the handle because he was mad about something. Whatever. Having a bad day. But it ended up turning out just fine. But a lot of people don't know where the line is. They don't know when they can use force. When can they? I was working security at a gun show, and one of the people I was working security with was a cop, and he said to me, I don't know why we have firearms here at this gun show, because you cannot shoot somebody for stealing property. Larceny is not an offense where you are justified in shooting anybody. And I thought about that. I was like, wow. Because at this gun show, only security was allowed to have loaded firearms. People coming and going with it was mostly antique firearms. But if somebody was going to try and walk out with John Wayne's lever action, we weren't going to be able to shoot them for that. We could probably chase them down, hold them for the cops, do something like that. But unless somebody was going to be shooting back at us as security, we were not going to be justified in shooting anybody. And it was interesting when this cop that I was working with actually said that. He's like, I don't know why we have guns. We can't shoot anybody for stealing. Which was a good thing to know, and I'm not knocking whether or not that's a stupid rule or stupid law to live by. I'm just saying it's good to know those things. It's a situation that happened a couple of months ago in Billings, Montana. This McElmurray that was driving all over Billings And when the cops originally approached him, it was for a burglary. He took off running, ended up stealing 5 different vehicles. Several of them were at gunpoint. He pointed his gun at the owner in the vehicle, had him get out, and drove off with the vehicle. And this is a situation where shots were being fired. He was shooting at the cops. The cops are shooting at him. To my knowledge, nobody got hurt. Nobody was killed. When they apprehended McElmurray, he was wounded, but I don't know if it was a gunshot wound. From what I was reading, from what I know, it didn't say specifically, because when they apprehended him, he had actually been in an accident. He wrecked one of the vehicles that he had stolen. But what would you do in a situation like that? If some criminal points a gun at you and you're in your vehicle and he tells you to get out, what are you going to do? I mean, it's easy for me to sit here now and quarterback that because I wasn't there. But what would you have done if you had been there, if that was you? In this case, this guy was a fleeing felon. He had shot at the cops had shot at him. Somebody could have been killed or hurt. If somebody would have been able to stop him long before he stole 3 more cars at gunpoint, that would have been nice. But again, we don't know how to handle these situations unless we put ourselves in that situation. Some people will say too, they're like, you know what, it's just better if you don't have a gun, if you just let them kill you, whoever it is, let them kill you and you don't have to deal with it, and then you're fine. I would say that's not the answer either. To anything that there's rules and there's laws, you can do it the right way. You just have to know what the rules are. You just have to know what the laws are so you don't get into trouble. Depending on where you live. I live in Wyoming. I have a pretty good idea where I'm justified in protecting myself or somebody else, my family, whatever. I have a pretty good idea. A lot of people do not, and it depends on where you live. Talk to your local law enforcement. Talk to people who do know. The cops would be more than happy to talk to you about it. And this McElmurray, who they had that chase with in Billings, Montana, I know him personally, and I know his brother. I hang out with a rough crowd, what can I say? But I always knew that if this guy wanted to be, he could be a handful, and he was. And this was a situation that could have been really bad. Somebody could have been killed. He could have been killed. The cops could have been killed. With all the shooting going on, somebody else could have been killed. If a citizen would have been ready for this incident, they would have had a firearm in their vehicle when he tried robbing them, maybe this could have been stopped a lot sooner. I have an aunt who lives in Colorado. She was robbed at gunpoint. She was in her vehicle and she shut the car off. Some thug came over, pointed a gun in her face, told her, "Give me your purse." And she did. And he told her to look away. When he got her purse, he said, "Look away." And she thought, when she looked away, he was going to kill her. He was going to blow her brains out, and that was the end. So she did what he said. He ran off, took her purse, and everything was fine. But this, for me, this is pretty close to home for me. This was my aunt. This happened to a family member that I care about. But this happened so fast. Again, we can sit here and quarterback it, but it happened so fast. What are you going to do in a situation like that? Think about it. Could she have done anything? I mean, if she would have been reaching for any kind of a weapon, he might have seen it and it could have gone a lot worse than it went. I knew another person who worked at a credit union. And this place was just begging to be robbed. I mean, no security cameras, no nothing. But one of the people that worked there, I knew her and I knew she had a firearm. And I don't think she was supposed to have one, but she did anyway. And the way she looked at it was, if anybody ever robs the place, I'll give them whatever they want. Bank says, credit union says, give them what they want, give them what they ask for, they'll leave, we're insured, whatever. But where she drew the line, where this teller drew the line at was, I give them whatever they want, but if they tell me I'm going with them, that's when bullets are going to start flying on my end. I'm not going with them. They try to kidnap me, take me as hostage, that's where it ends. There are so many stories of people using firearms and stopping crime or killing someone and then getting in trouble. But they felt like they were justified. They're like, I was protecting myself. Do you know what protecting yourself is? It might take a couple hours to find out where exactly the line is drawn to where you are justified in protecting yourself, some stranger on the street, your family. It's worth knowing. That's what my message is today. It's worth knowing. Find out where the line is, depending on where you live, depending on what state you're in. Talk to local law enforcement. Find out where the line is drawn, where you are justified in protecting yourself. Lots of Americans out there, great Americans, that love their Second Amendment rights, and that is great. But there's a lot of responsibility that comes with pulling the trigger on somebody. You need to be able to prove why you thought that person was a deadly threat and why you felt it was necessary to stop the deadly threat with deadly force. Find out where the laws are, what the stance is on those things. There's a video I watched of this guy that was in his vehicle and somebody was yelling at him and he felt threatened. He was scared. He pepper sprayed the guy outside his vehicle. Justified? No. When the cops showed up, they actually wrote the guy that had done the pepper spraying a citation. And he didn't understand why. He was like, I was scared. The guy was yelling at me. But the guy wasn't trying to do any physical harm. He wasn't trying to break into the vehicle. But this guy got his feelings hurt. He was scared. He pepper sprayed this person. Not justifiable. Getting your feelings hurt, being scared is not a justifiable reason. Find out what the reasons are. And we'll talk more about that later. I've got more situations. I got more scenarios I want to go over here and talk about what people did and where the line was drawn and whether or not they were justified. But in the meantime, think about these things. A lot of people don't want to put their mind in certain situations because it's scary. They don't want to think about it because it's bad. Well, if a bad situation happens to you, you're going to be doing a lot of thinking about it. It's worth your time. It's worth the investment of looking into it. You guys are worth it. Your family is worth it.